As we continue to cover what's been going on in Florida, as Phil said, another day of record cases, more than 5,500 coronavirus cases reported in the state yesterday. And before we talk about this in more detail, you should see the overall statistics in Florida. I just want to point out, as I mentioned at the top of the hour, that this is not all because of an increase in testing. Is that part of it? Of course. But if you look at the stats, from May 17th, the percentage of people testing positive in Florida was 2.27%. As of the 19th of June, just a few days ago, that percentage of positive tests in the state all the way up to 14%. Now, it does fluctuate, but anything over 5%, the experts will tell you, should be a level of concern. To Congressman Michael Waltz, Republican congressman out of Florida, who joins us now. What's your level of concern, Congressman?
Well, just to add to the statistics that you were mentioning in terms of positivity rate, I think it is very, very important for all of us to also talk about the fact that, yes, the number of cases are rising, the positivity is rising, which I think makes sense as we open up and as we test more, but the hospitalization rate is relatively flat. The death rate is relatively flat. If you look from mid-May until now, when the opening began, that we're in about the same place, and I think it is worth remembering that the goal always was to flatten the curve so that our hospital systems could get the equipment that it needs, the PPE, the ventilators, the hospital space and the beds, and we've accomplished that. My real concern is that the left seems to be drastically moving the goalpost. Now you have New York Governor Cuomo talking about leaving malls and gyms and other businesses shut down and closed until we find a vaccine. It's not clear to me what he means by that. Is he talking about discovering a vaccine, fully producing a vaccine, getting it fully distributed? So, at the end of the day, what has me so upset is the people making these decisions, they're getting paid twice a month. And these business owners are not. They can't sustain themselves. They've got to put food on their table. And we've just completely moved the goal that we originally had in place here.
What can be tough about it, Congressman, is the timing on this. And I get your point about that goal. You're right. Early on, that's all we were talking about is let's make sure the hospitals don't get overwhelmed. We knew it here in the New York area. The stats I saw from Florida, and maybe you have updated numbers, was that...
No, I'm sorry, but the goal never was that we are going to shut down the entire country until we have zero infections. But that, honestly, that seems to be what some leaders, some elected officials are talking about that now. That is just not realistic. And sitting here in Washington, we can't continue to print our way out of this problem. We can't continue to feed the entire country from debt spending. It's not sustainable. It's not a serious conversation.
No, I get your point. I want to make one other point, Congressman, just before we run out of time. I was going to say that the stat I saw was that 75% of the hospital beds were occupied in the state, and that a couple of hospitals in Palm Beach County had no ICU beds. So I guess the larger point people would say is that those indicators, hospitalizations and deaths, can often be lagging from the cases. So if you wait to react, maybe you waited too long. Is that fair?
Well, and so we can't talk about Florida or the country, for that matter, as this monolithic thing. Florida as a state tends to run about 70% in terms of its beds. And if you have localities where you have hot spots, then sure, perhaps they take a different measures. But what we can't have are these one-size-fits-all kind of massive reactions. We have to allow people to get back to work. And importantly, individuals and business owners have to keep abiding by the guidelines, or else they are going to get these drastic reactions. And I think personal responsibility still needs to be a big part of the conversation.
Understood. It will be. We'll keep the conversation going. Unfortunately, we do have to run now. Congressman, thank you so much.